So just in terms of clarity, we're a new member to the Bvrla this year. We're a strategic integrated marketing agency. We focus quite heavily on the digital area as well. And we work across 3 sectors, and automotive is one of those sectors, which I head up. And actually my background is sitting with you guys, working in the OEM and leasing company space for nearly 15 years. In terms of our clients, some names up there which I won't run through, but a number of OEMs and leasing companies and rental companies as well. And then across the wider business, some other household names as well that we're proud to represent. In terms of some of our work, just a couple of projects that we've been working on this year. One on the far end that's of interest, we were the first agency in Europe to integrate into the Mercedes Me platform for Mercedes, so into their connected car program and drawing data from that to provide some additional products to customers. So in terms of what I want to talk about today, talking about data, so Forbes recently came out and said that data is more valuable than gold. So why are they saying that? Well, I think it's pretty clear from everything that we've talked about today, data has had some part to play in pretty much all of the presentations today. And I'll come back to this point later on, but it's really just to set that up. So just a few stats on data. By 2020, 1.7 megabytes of data per person per second will be created. So this is across sort of the digital universe. And that equates to 44 zettabytes. So if anyone knows how much that is, it sounds a lot. But it's an awful amount of data is being created, and it's being created through these channels. So every time you make a Google search, every time you click on a website, every time you make a purchase online, every time you start to make a purchase online, but you don't complete that purchase, this data is all being collected in the ether with different companies in different places, but it's being held with your information. Interestingly as well, social media, so a lot of information is being held when you like a post, whether you follow a company, when you upload a picture to Facebook and it's geotagged so they know where you were when you took it and where you were when you uploaded it. So this type of data is being built and it's being used by companies to help target marketing offers to you. Some of the bits where we move into the world of big data, and this is interesting for me from a marketing perspective. So apparently, if you leverage big data, but you can improve your margins by up to 60%. So this is an area where clearly big data and using data is a way of being able to generate revenue and to improve profit. But whether it's really big data in the marketing world is a question. And then moving on, 73% of organizations have a plan to invest in big data this year, or are already investing in big data. And when we're talking about marketing, this is an area that I'm slightly skeptical of, is that when we talk about big data, geotabs were talking about it earlier, using these really big data sets to drive really intelligent decisions from lots of disparate information, that's not necessarily sort of relating into the marketing world, and certainly not with kind of 99% of companies out there. And I think it's where big data is being used as this catch-all for what essentially is just data. So all the stuff we've talked about, we talk about big data, we've talked about data, we talk about connected car. At the end of the day, it's all data. Where I believe that companies are talking about marketing using data, it's about using data to drive insights. So it's about taking the data that you have access to, and it's about using it to do intelligent things that tailor your communications to customers. So it's not about how much data you have, it's about what you do with it. So just a sort of point here of saying that the power of the data from a marketing sense at least, but I think it applies across all channels, is it comes from the insights that you create, not the amount that you have. So I think sometimes when you talk about big data, everyone says, oh, I need more of it. I need to get more data. I need to get it and keep it and hold it. And actually, that's not where the value comes. The value comes from what you do with it. So because we work in marketing, and when we have a phrase or a name that we don't like, we just invent something different. So I'm going to talk about big insights today, so about how we can drive insights through data in the marketing channel. This isn't a new concept, really. So using data to make decisions and to learn things about people. I think in the 1800s, the first census took place in the UK. People were collecting data mainly for the purposes of tax and collecting tax, but it's essentially driving or collecting data to help drive decisions and to do certain things. So it's a relatively old thing. In terms of what we see in the marketing area, so again, it's something that we've been doing for a long time, data segmentation. So at the point where your business says, well, we're going to send different offers to our retail customers, to our fleet customers, you're using data to make decisions to derive some kind of insight. Over time, we've been able to apply generic trends to that data. So we've been able to say that we know that a fleet customer or a B2B customer is more likely to open an email during the working hours and a retail customer after 7 o'clock. We can apply some of these general trends to our data to say, okay, let's start to market in a more smart way. In more recent times, a lot of the CRM systems that we use allow us to make decisions based on our own data. So actually to understand when our B2B customers open their emails. Do they open them during their lunch times? Do they open them at the end of the day? So we can start to tailor our communications and we can tailor what we do based on our own data. But it's generally sort of manual. It's about sort of learning, test and learn, sort of making tweaks as we go along. In more sophisticated CRM systems, and often in larger businesses, we start to automate some of that. So the system is starting to send 2 different subject lines on emails or starting to move content around in what it's presenting to customers. And then it's learning from what customers like, and then it's applying that into the next round of communication. So just starting to learn within the systems. And then really when we talk about big data in marketing, really what I think companies are talking about or referring to is about personalization. So it's about creating on a large scale, personal communications with your customers. So it's about taking the content that you know and serving it to them at a time when you know that they want it. And this is something that, again, going back to my earlier point, there's a very small number of companies that are really doing this effectively, but I believe this is what everybody's aiming for from a marketing perspective. So in terms of creating big insights, when we're asked this question, and we get asked it as a marketing agency, I want to do big data. I want to leverage big data this year. Well, again, coming back to the point earlier, starting with the future in mind, why do you want to do it? What are you trying to achieve? So really that's the first point for us, and it's something that's really close to our hearts in terms of everything that we do, is trying to understand the why, trying to understand what the objective for what we're doing is. So there's been lots and lots of talk today about data, collecting data, holding data, processing data. But why? What's the purpose? Is it you want to sell more cars, or you want to lease more vehicles, improve loyalty, nurture prospects, or all of the above, most likely, sell data in certain situations? So these are the questions that really, from a marketing point of view, need to be asked before you start thinking about what data you want to capture or what data you want to process. The other thing that's more, or even closer to our hearts at Clarity, is thinking about the customer. So again, there's been lots and lots of talk today about data and how we collect it and share it or don't share it. There's not been a huge amount of talk about the customer, about actually what the customer wants. So from our perspective, when we're thinking about the data that we collect for marketing purposes, it's thinking about why are you collecting it and why is that beneficial to the customer? Why is that beneficial to your relationship with the customer? Why does the customer want this product? Why do they want this communication that you're sending to them? Because that's a really fundamental thing, because often as businesses, and I know from my 15 years in the corporate world, we often work on the objective today, the thing I need to do today, drive a tactical sale, or we need to get some more information about a customer in this area. It's often driven by really small interactions and things that are going on in the short term. And it's thinking wider than that and thinking about where it's beneficial for the customer. So how do we go about doing that? So when we've defined these things, what are the things that we need to look at? Well, the first thing is thinking about what data you have already. So this is thinking about the data that exists, and again, we've talked a lot about today, and thinking about that data and how you can use it. So I guess a key point here is saying that you probably have more data than you think you have. There's lots of information in social media, for example, that you can link to your customer databases that can give you great insights. So your data that you have today is probably more powerful than you think it is from a communications point of view. Then it's starting to think about what data you need. So in terms of trying to reach these objectives and trying to create these things for customers, what data do you need to support that? So that means then your strategy going forward, you can start to capture data that allows you to create better insights, to give better value to your customers. And also, thinking back to some of the presentations earlier, it's about capturing that in a way that you can use it. So thinking about the permissions. There's nothing worse than having a database full of valuable data and insights that you can't use. Thinking about where you can acquire data, so where you've established these gaps in the data that you've got from a communications point of view, it's thinking, where can you plug that? So I mentioned earlier about social media, and there's lots of information available, customer matching tools from the likes of Facebook and LinkedIn that you can use to help build better profiles on your customers. But also thinking of credit reference agencies and people like that who can supply extra data for you. Just briefly touching on the tools that you need. So I mentioned earlier about CRM systems, but thinking about what your objective is and what that means in respect of what tools you use, what CRM systems you have, and how you want to implement those. So if you're a business who has 100,000 B2C customers, you probably want to think about investing in a system that can allow you to work towards personalization. If you're a business who has a target customer group of 50 and you already deal with 30 of them, you probably don't need a sophisticated CRM. So it's about getting the right tool for the job as well as the right data. And then thinking about where you can leverage true big data today. So there's lots of tools on the market with specific roles within a customer journey that use big data to help you make better decisions. So, for example, there's a company called Phrasey. Phrasey will help you to create really impactful subject lines for your emails. And the way they do that is they take billions and billions of emails that have been sent, billions and billions of subject lines that have been sent. They measure the effectiveness of those within different segments, and they can either rate or they can help you to create really strong subject lines. So that's using big data. That's using wider data sets than you have, but to do specific things within the marketing journey. And what's really important, again, coming back to it, is that we make sure that when we're thinking about each of these stages, we're doing it with a customer in mind. So the customer should be central to it. You want to capture that data from the customer. Why? Why do you want to use it, and how's it going to add value to them? So there's two trends that are sort of progressing in the marketing sense. And I probably could spend 15 minutes talking about each of these, so I'm just going to touch on them very briefly. But probabilistic and deterministic marketing are two areas that are becoming sort of key trends, certainly in the retail space for marketing. And it's about starting to leverage that big data to work on personalization, but also then to start to predict with customers what they want before, almost before they know they want it. Not quite as simple as that, but I think a lot of us have experienced, particularly in social media, being advertised things that you haven't searched for yet. It's using this type of technology. And finally, I just want to talk about, and it's another thing that's been touched on a few times today, but just about data silos. So this is just coming back to the point with the Forbes quote earlier on, that really the data is only as valuable as gold if you use it. So unlike gold, if you lock it away in your vault downstairs and you never use it for anything, it has no value. So there's an opportunity for using data correctly, but also sharing data to give better insights for everybody, which ultimately makes happier customers. Because there's a challenge that if, as an industry, we can't connect our data essentially to give something better to our customers, somebody else will. Google, Facebook, Amazon, whoever it will be, will start to fill this space for us. And that's me.